Hello. Sorry I was a few minutes behind having technical difficulties, of course, which only happens when you're going live. Welcome to those who are here. Today we are talking, the topic of this live session is freedom should feel better than this, right? And I'm really glad you're here. So this is specifically for people leaving high control or high demand religion or other high demand situation, especially neurodivergent brains, but not necessarily, who have left and are experiencing overwhelm, burnout symptoms, and that kind of thing. So, like I said, the session is called Freedom Should Feel Better Than This. And for a lot of people, that title lands before anything else does, because the confusing part is not always leaving the system. Sometimes the confusing part is what comes after leaving the system. You did the hard part, you questioned things, you walked away, you rebuilt your beliefs, or at least you've begun to. And then instead of life opening up the way that you expected, something else happened. Not necessarily a crisis or a total collapse, just this ongoing sense that life is technically yours now, but somehow it seems harder to run than it used to. It might be harder to organize, harder to prioritize, harder to feel good inside or peaceful, harder to trust yourself. And today is not about fixing that. It's about making it make sense. Because when something finally makes sense, the struggle stops automatically meaning personal failure. And that's what we're looking for. A very understandable expectation after leaving high control religion is that life will feel lighter. There is less pressure. There are less expectations on you personally, on your time, on your energy. There is less tension. There is more room. There is more ease. And sometimes there really is a lot of relief at first. Sometimes there's a lot of grief too. You lost everything that you thought you believed that your life was based on, and maybe who you thought you were. You might have all of those things, but for many people, the initial layer, what starts showing up is overwhelm, indecision, emotional volatility, exhaustion, trouble following through, difficulty resting is a big one, weird guilt, loss of motivation, and just a shapelessness to your life. And that's the moment a lot of people start asking, were my parents right? Is this because I left the church? Is this what I was always warned would happen? I just want to normalize that feeling right away. That's a totally normal feeling to have. This pattern is really common. It is not a sign that you're deconstructing wrong or proof that leaving was wrong. And it's not proof that something is fundamentally wrong with you. One of the most helpful reframes about this is distress after deconstruction is not regression. It is just the exposure of missing scaffolding, the scaffolding that was running your life. In other words, something was holding more of your life together than you realized. And when it disappeared, your nervous system experienced not only relief, but also loss. Not because the system was good for you, not loss because the harm wasn't real. It was. Loss because systems can be harmful and still be organizing. Those two things can be true at the same time. Move my notes. Okay. High demand religion did not just offer you beliefs. It organized your time, your behavior, your identity, your expectations of the world and yourself, your sense of belonging, your regulation, your emotional regulation, all kinds of regulation, right? And your priorities. So let me make that a little more concrete. It organized your time, right? It told you what your week was for, what your year was for, what happens at each stage of your life, what you should make time for. I am going to turn down the lights, making me crazy. What you should make time for, what counted as a righteous use of energy, even if that was restrictive, it still reduced your decision load and told you what to expect. It organized authority for you. It answered what matters, what comes first, what is the right thing, and what a good life looks like. You did not have to generate that framework internally from scratch. It organized your behavior through approval from others, through expectations, through fear, even. We are used to operating under fear, right? Through duty, through visibility, not healthy regulation, but effective regulation. It organized your identity. It told you who you were, why you were here, what your role was, what goodness looked like, how you would know if you were doing well. So when people say, I left and I thought I'd feel freer, but instead I feel weirdly untethered. I hear this a lot. That is about all of this. So it makes perfect sense, right? Because what disappeared, like I said, was not just belief. It was an organizing system, an operating system. Sometimes people hear that and think, okay, but why does this make my everyday life harder? This is why. Inside the system, a lot of the invisible work of life was being externally managed. Outside of the system, that work comes back to you all at once. That is now all on your brain, that whole load that we just ran through. For example, a free Saturday. You have an open Saturday. That should feel amazing. But instead, sometimes it feels agitating. You don't know whether to rest. Did you earn that rest? Do you clean? Do you work? Do you see friends? Do you help out a friend? Do you do something meaningful? Do you do something productive? Do you do something spiritual? Or finally do the thing that you've been putting off? Nothing feels quite right. There is no one right thing, and that's unnerving. Whatever you choose feels vaguely wrong. That is not laziness or immaturity. It is just uncontained choice. So another example would be just making an ordinary adult decision, right? A lot of us didn't have to make decisions because we relied on our leadership for that. And when we did have decisions, we took them to God and we made sure they were in line with the doctrine of the church. And then we prayed and waited for an answer, which a lot of times came from an external sign, right? So you need to make this decision. It could be about money. It could be about parenting, work, like your job, school, how you spend your time, whatever, which job to choose, where to live. So now there is no built-in answer key. So every decision suddenly feels heavier than it should. Not because you are incapable, that is not the case, but you are doing authority generation work that used to be outsourced. A lot of people say rest doesn't feel restful after leaving. So rest is another one. That makes sense too, because if rest used to be morally loaded, justified, supervised, or conditional, then freedom doesn't automatically make rest feel safe. You can leave the beliefs and still have a nervous system that expects pressure. Okay, so what happens when the structure, authority, identity, certainty, and external regulation all fall away without replacement? Usually not liberation all at once. Usually some version of collapse under uncontained choice. And when I say collapse, I do not mean dramatic breakdown necessarily. I mean fatigue that doesn't make sense, doesn't seem to have a source, a loss of momentum, procrastination that feels loaded, inability to settle, guilt without a clear cause, trouble knowing what matters, avoidance that looks like personal failure, feeling behind in your own life. Collapse here is often not an event, it is a state. So I want to add a neurodivergent layer here because for many people, this is where the whole thing starts making more sense. Neurodivergent nervous systems often struggle more with ambiguity, with a lack of clarity, with open, unstructured time, self-generated prioritization, right? Internal motivation, which I talk about a lot in my work. If that is a struggle for you, motivation, definitely check my TikTok or my Substack. Unstructured reflection, decision overload. Again, not because they are worse, but because they work differently. High demand religion can mask a lot of those differences by supplying constant external cues. It gives rhythm, structure, urgency, direction, meaning, and accountability. So when that system disappears, the struggle can intensify very fast. Not because freedom is bad, not because religion was good, but because the scaffolding disappeared and your nervous system still needs support, external support. So a concrete example is this is why someone can genuinely want to create a thoughtful new life after religion, maybe a journaling practice or a spirituality practice or better routines or more intentional living and still not follow through. Not because they don't care, not because they are resisting healing, but because the task now requires self-initiation, sequencing, these are all skills, emotional regulation, tolerance for ambiguity, sustained attention, and internal structure. And that is a lot of load for one prefrontal cortex that has never juggled so many responsibilities in one day at one time. So this is one of the strangest parts of this stage. Freedom can actually feel unsafe. Rest can feel unsafe. Choice can feel unsafe. Not because you secretly want control, not because you were meant to stay, but because the nervous system is not asking only for freedom. It is also asking for containment. It is asking, what manages me now? What organizes me now? What reduces my load now? Who can take some of this load? Why does my life feel uninhabitable now, right? So this is the shift that I most want you to leave with today. Collapse is not failure. When you have that executive function collapse, that is not failure. That is information. Dysregulation does not mean you are deficient. That is not the same thing. Difficulty leaving is not proof that you left wrong or that it was wrong that you left. It often means something real was removed and something new has not fully formed yet. And that is a very different story than I should be further along. Why am I not okay yet? I'm bad at freedom. I can't handle my own life. And we are not fixing that whole problem today, obviously, but we are changing what that problem means. And for many people, that change alone reduces a huge amount of self-blame. There is also grief in this stage. Not only grief about the beliefs, but grief about certainty. There's no more certainty. External structure that managed our life, the identity that we had in the church, the sense of belonging, the future self-imagination, and the clarity that we had. Sometimes even grief about how easy it used to be to know what mattered. That grief can coexist with the relief of being out and with the release of pressure. It can coexist with being very sure you did the right thing by leaving. Mixed feelings here are not confusion, they are just complexity. Before we move into questions, I want to make this a little bit more concrete because everything we've talked about today can stay abstract if it doesn't connect to your actual life. Most people do not feel stuck everywhere. They feel stuck in one or two specific places that keep looping. It might be something like a task you keep thinking about but haven't started, a decision that you keep circling but haven't made yet. Sorry, getting a message. Something simple that somehow feels impossible to initiate right now. Something important that keeps getting pushed to later. Or even, I get this message a lot. I just don't even know where to start with my own life right now. Maybe work doesn't feel right. Things just don't feel right, and you're not sure why. And I just want you to quietly take a second and identify one area like that, not your whole life, just one place where things are not moving. And notice what is happening there. You know, if you're procrastinating, I don't know why I said that weird, or you just feel stuck, it's not that it's a lack of caring. It might be that there are too many moving parts, or there's an unclear starting point. There's no defined what counts as done, or there's a mismatch between your plan and your actual capacity, or just you might have too much to hold in your head at once. So your brain does the only thing it knows how to do. It loops, it delays, it avoids the thing, not because you do not want to move forward, but because the structure is just not there yet. So this is the part people live in often for weeks or months, thinking about it, revisiting it, trying to figure it out, probably beating themselves up about it, probably being really mean to themselves about it. Or maybe that's just me. And then still nothing actually moves. And that's not because it's impossible or that you're not capable. It's just that it has not been translated into something your brain can execute yet. So the kind of work I do most often with people at this stage is not fixing everything. It's just exactly this. We just take one of those stuck points and translate it into something that actually works in your real life, not in theory, not for someone else, not for a neurotypical person or your brother or your sister, not for the perfect version of you or the version of you that you wish you were. In your actual capacity, your actual energy, your actual brain. What that usually looks like is we take that one thing that feels stuck and we figure out where it's breaking down. What specifically is missing? What is too big or too unclear? And what your system actually needs instead. So by the end, you're not holding the whole problem anymore. You have one clear step, a plan that fits your capacity, and a way to move forward this week. If you already know what that one stuck area is for you, that's exactly the kind of thing we can work through in a single session. That's what I just described is called my clarity reset session. And I'm just dropping the link for that in the chat. And then I want to open it up for questions. I see there's only one of you left right now. So if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. Put your question in the chat. A lot of times, we have a question in mind and don't necessarily want to put it out either. So, and that is totally okay. I go ahead and put something down if you have it, and otherwise I will, I have a couple example questions that I like to run through. So one that I come up against a lot with people is, why can I not just decide what I want? And that is because we were trained to identify what was correct before we were allowed to identify what we wanted. Desire, preference, and internal authority usually need to be rebuilt. I don't have a group session running right now, but that is a lot of what we do in my group. Well, I have one running, but I don't have one starting soon. I should open up a wait list, but that is what we do, is build up that internal authority. So it's not so scary. A lot of that, like not knowing what to do and not knowing what we want, is really about never having built those skills. And we worked really hard for a long time to smother those signals. So those signals about what we might want, what we might need, are intentionally hard to access for us. We didn't want to hear those before. And so a lot of times it's just a process of rebuilding that pathway and the skill of knowing what you want and what you need. Let's see, what's another question that I might get. A lot of like, why can I not get motivated? Why, I just can't make myself get anything done. I'm not motivated with work. I'm not motivated with home or whatever. And kind of like what I was saying when I was describing the clarity session is, so much of that, I'm a knitter, so I like to think in terms of yarn. And a lot of times, like if you've ever knit or crocheted or work with yarn, sometimes it takes a really long time to find the end of the yarn that you're going to work with. And that's how it is with a lot of areas where we're stuck and we can't move forward. It is really just about working your way through that yarn and see what goes where and follow those threads until you find the end. Because as soon as you have the end, it's one step after another, and it's clear and it's doable. A lot of these situations that we have going on, the things that we can't make ourselves do, they're unclear, they're muddy. you might have conflicting values, conflicting messages in your head about it, and you don't know which one to listen to. Maybe every time you try and take steps toward getting the thing done, whatever the thing is, you get overwhelmed with anxiety. Um, and that is usually caused by many messages stacked on top of each other. And that unstacking is another thing that we do in the group coaching and in the reset session, because those overwhelming feelings are usually not simple. They're not just one simple thing, right? That tracks. That's a human brain, especially a neurodivergent brain. We are so complex, so fun, and so complex. Okay, so if you have any other questions, feel free to message me or email me. Follow that link if you are interested in working through one area of your life where you feel stuck. And just to recap, if life after leaving the church has felt harder than you expected or harder than people said it would be, it looked really easy for your friend down the street, and it doesn't seem fair. I hope today at least gave you this a framework that fits better than self-blame. Not that you failed, not that you cannot handle freedom over your own life and freedom over your own brain, and not that you should be over this by now. I hear a lot of, I should be over this by now, and I want to be over this by now. But just recognizing that something real was organizing your life and organizing your whole brain, and it disappeared. And that is huge. And your nervous system is still adapting. And difficulty there is understandable. That's not the end of the work, obviously, but it's the beginning of a much kinder kind of work that works for you and works for your brain. So thank you for those that join me, and for those who will be watching the recording. Again, feel free to email me. I think the link, I don't know if my email is on the YouTube, but it is at my website. Reach out with any questions, and you can still add questions to the chat as well. Oh, thank you. Add questions to the chat and I will check in. So thanks so much.